Stand on the flight deck of a Nimitz-class carrier, the workhorse of the U.S. Navy for the last 50 years, and you feel the ship breathe. Steam pipes rattle beneath the non-skid surface. The deck vibrates with the stored energy of high-pressure boilers, and when a catapult fires, it sounds like a cannon shot, a violent, percussive explosion of released steam that shakes the fillings in your teeth. It is a visceral, industrial experience, smelling of hot oil, sulfur, and the brute force of 20th-century engineering. Now step onto the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford. The scene is disorienting. An F-35C Lightning II, a 30-ton stealth fighter, hooks up to the shuttle. The pilot gives the salute. The operator, sitting in a glass-enclosed bubble, presses a button on a digital touchscreen. There is no explosion. There is no cloud of white steam blinding the deck crew. No shudder runs through the hull. Instead, you hear a rising electric hum, a sound like a massive turbine spinning up or a sci-fi weapon charging. Then, with a sharp mechanical snap, the jet is gone. In 2 seconds, the aircraft accelerates to 160 miles per hour, pushed by an invisible magnetic hand. It feels unnatural. It feels like magic. But for the first 5 years of this ship's life, that magic was a curse. The USS Gerald R. Ford is the most expensive warship ever built, a $13.3 billion gamble on the future of naval warfare. It was designed to be the ultimate weapon, automated, efficient, and lethal, capable of launching 25% more aircraft than its predecessors with hundreds fewer sailors. But the road to deployment was paved with catastrophic failures. Elevators that wouldn't lift bombs. Toilets that cost $400,000 to unclog. Radar systems that couldn't see targets. Propulsion bearings that ground themselves to dust. Today, we are going to look past the recruitment posters and the staggering price tag to go deep inside the glass giant. We will explain the physics of the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, EMALS, and why its software bugs terrified the Navy. We will visit the advanced weapons elevators that use magnets instead of cables to move ordnance. We will explore the controversial gender-neutral bathrooms that became a plumbing nightmare. And we will meet the crew who turned a broken prototype into a combat-ready beast during the high-stakes pressure of the 2023 Mediterranean deployment. This is the unvarnished story of the ship that almost sank the Navy's budget. To understand the magnitude of the risk the Navy took with the Ford, you have to understand the philosophy of naval procurement. Usually, when the Navy builds a new class of ship, they introduce 1 or 2 new technologies to minimize the risk of failure. On the Ford, they introduced 23 new technologies simultaneously. It was a gamble of epic proportions, driven by a desire to leapfrog a generation of warfare. The hull looks similar to the Nimitz-class from a distance, but everything inside the skin is alien. The most radical change is the power source. 2 A-1B nuclear reactors sit deep in the armored belly of the ship. These aren't just updated versions of the old A-4W reactors found on the Nimitz. They are entirely new monsters designed by Bechtel Marine Propulsion. They are smaller, simpler, and require fewer sailors to operate, yet they generate 3 times the electrical power of the Nimitz-class. A Nimitz-class carrier generates about 400 megawatts of thermal energy, but much of that is used directly as steam. The Ford converts a massive amount of that thermal energy directly into electricity, creating a 13,800-volt electrical distribution system that rivals the grid of a small city. This massive surplus of power exists for one reason. The Ford doesn't run on steam. It runs on lightning. On a Nimitz, steam from the reactors is piped all over the ship to power catapults, pumps, laundry presses, and heaters. It is a maintenance nightmare. Steam leaks are dangerous. Invisible high-pressure steam can cut a man in half. The pipes corrode, burst, and require constant lagging and repair. On the Ford, the reactors are essentially massive power plants plugged into a high-voltage grid. This allows for the ship's crown jewel and its biggest headache, EMALS. The Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System is a linear induction motor. Think of it as a railgun but for airplanes. A 300-foot trough in the flight deck is lined with stators, electromagnets that turn on and off in a precise sequence. The shuttle that pulls the plane has permanent magnets. When the system is activated, a traveling magnetic wave pulls the shuttle forward. The acceleration is smooth and programmable. A steam catapult has two settings, hard and harder. It jolts the aircraft violently, putting immense stress on the airframe and the pilot. EMALS accelerates gradually, saving wear and tear on the jets, extending their service life. It allows the Ford to launch heavy, bomb-laden fighters and light, fragile surveillance drones from the same catapult just by changing a software setting. But there is a catch that nearly doomed the program. On a steamship, the 4 catapults are mechanically independent. If one breaks, the other 3 keep working. On the Ford, the 4 catapults share a common energy storage system, massive flywheels that spin at thousands of RPMs to store the electrical charge needed for a launch. In the early days of testing, the system had a fatal flaw. If one catapult threw a critical fault code, the system would isolate the energy storage, causing all 4 catapults to go down simultaneously. Imagine being in combat with planes in the air low on fuel, and suddenly you cannot launch the tanker to refuel them because a software glitch crashed your entire flight deck. In 2020, during sea trials, the system failed for days. The Navy had to fly in civilian software engineers to patch the code while the ship was drifting at sea. It was a humiliation, but today the crew has mastered it. During its 2023 deployment, the Ford launched over 10,000 sorties. The system didn't just work, it outperformed the steam catapults in reliability and cycle time. The silence of the deck has become the sound of reliability. The technological leap extends to the recovery of aircraft as well. The Advanced Arresting Gear (AAG) replaced the hydraulic engines of the past. On a Nimitz, a steel cable pulls a piston through a cylinder of fluid to absorb the energy of a landing jet. It is simple, but it requires manual resetting and specific settings for each aircraft weight. The Ford's AAG uses a water twister, a turbine that spins in a tank of fluid coupled with a massive electric motor. The motor can generate torque to slow the plane down or spin in reverse to retract the cable instantly. It is software controlled. It can catch a heavy drone or a light fighter jet without needing a mechanical reset. However, in the early days, the AAG failed constantly. The water twisters broke. The software glitched. The Navy spent years redesigning the system, turning a mechanism that should have been simple into a billion-dollar science project. Today, it works, but the sailors on the deck still look at it with suspicion, knowing that a software bug could theoretically prevent a landing. If you can't get bombs to the flight deck, an aircraft carrier is just a floating airport, not a warship. This brings us to the scandal of the Advanced Weapons Elevators (AW). On the Nimitz, weapons elevators are mechanical beasts with cables and pulleys. They are slow, greasy, and dangerous, moving ordnance at about 100 feet per minute. The Ford introduced elevators that use linear synchronous motors, magnets again, to move cargo. They travel in blast-proof shafts, moving 24,000 pounds of bombs at 150 feet per minute. They are twice as fast and carry twice the load. Theoretically, when the ship was delivered to the Navy in 2017, strictly speaking, none of the 11 elevators worked. The magnets weren't sinking. The doors wouldn't close because the tolerances were too tight for a ship that flexes at sea. The elevators would get stuck between decks. The ship deployed for its initial trials without the ability to move heavy ordnance efficiently. Sailors had to use ropes and pulleys to move supplies, a humiliating regression to 19th-century technology on a 21st-century ship. It took years and millions of dollars to fix. Specialized teams from the contractor lived on the ship, redesigning the guide rails and rewriting the code. Now watching an operate is mesmerizing. It glides silently. It accelerates instantly. It allows the Ford to rearm a jet in minutes, turning the ship into a pit stop for airstrikes. The sortie generation rate, how fast you can turn planes around, is 30% higher on the Ford than any other carrier. That is the metric that wins wars. Living on the Ford is a different experience from the cramped, humid quarters of the Nimitz. The ship was designed with quality of life in mind to improve retention. The passageways are wider. The lighting is LED adjustable to simulate day and night cycles to help the crew's circadian rhythms. The berthing compartments are smaller, housing 30 people instead of 60 or 100. This means less noise, fewer smells, and better sleep. The air conditioning is incredible. Thanks to the massive electrical power of the A-1B reactors, the Ford is cool. On the Nimitz, the engineering spaces and steam tunnels are 110-degree sweatboxes where sailors lose pounds of water weight in a shift. On the Ford, the engineering spaces are air-conditioned server rooms. For a sailor on a 9-month deployment in the Persian Gulf, coming back to a cool, quiet rack is a luxury worth billions. However, the creature comforts came with a controversial design choice: the toilets. The Ford is the first carrier with gender-neutral restrooms. There are no urinals on the entire ship. Every toilet is a sit-down stall. The idea was flexibility. The Navy could reassign a berthing compartment from men to women without replumbing the bathroom to add or remove urinals. It seemed like a logical, progressive move. But the plumbing system itself is a disaster. The Ford uses a vacuum flush system, similar to a commercial airliner, to save water and weight. The pipes are narrow, about 2 inches in diameter. Sailors, being sailors, flush things they shouldn't: uniform patches, wet wipes, dip cans, and thick toilet paper. When a clog happens on a vacuum system, it doesn't just affect one toilet. It knocks out the suction for an entire zone. A whole berthing department can lose their toilets instantly. The calcification in the pipes requires a specialized acid flush to clear. The Navy spends nearly $400,000 per acid flush treatment. It is a maintenance headache that no designer anticipated, proving that sometimes low-tech gravity drains are superior to high-tech vacuums. The eyes of the ship are also revolutionary. Look at the island, the control tower of a Nimitz. It is covered in spinning dishes, antennas, and masts. It looks like a chaotic antenna farm. On the Ford, the island is smaller, sits further back on the deck, and is covered in smooth gray slabs. This is the dual-band radar DBR. It has no moving parts. It uses phased array technology to scan the sky electronically. It can track a hypersonic missile moving at Mach 5 and a small drone hovering at sea level simultaneously. On a Nimitz, you have a room full of radar operators shouting coordinates from different systems. On the Ford, the DBR does the thinking. It integrates with the ship's defense missiles automatically, creating a fire control solution in milliseconds. The island's new location creates acres of usable real estate on the flight deck, known as the pit stop. The planes land, taxi to the pit stop, get refueled and rearmed without blocking the catapults, and take off again. It looks subtle, but moving the tower changed the entire flow of the deck, increasing the lethality of the air wing. The operational reality of the Ford was tested during its first full deployment in 2023. This was the final exam. The ship was sent to the Mediterranean. Following the October 7th attacks in Israel, the Ford Strike Group was ordered to the eastern Mediterranean to deter Hezbollah and Iran from widening the conflict. The deployment was extended 3 times. The ship stayed at sea for 76 extra days. The crew was exhausted. The systems were pushed to the limit. And the ship worked. The EMALS didn't crash. The elevators moved tons of bombs. The radar tracked thousands of contacts in a chaotic war zone. The Ford proved that it wasn't a lemon, it was just a very complex machine that needed to be broken in. Captain Rick Burgess, the commanding officer, noted that the ship got better the longer it stayed at sea. The crew learned the quirks of the software. They stopped fighting the ship and started using it. They launched over 10,000 sorties, a tempo that would have broken a steam catapult system's maintenance schedule. The future of the U.S. Navy is built on the hull of the Ford. This ship is just the first of a class that will sail until the year 2070. The USS John F. Kennedy CVN-79 is nearing completion. The Enterprise CVN-80 and Doris Miller CVN-81 are under construction. They are learning from the Ford's mistakes. The Kennedy will have better elevator software from day one. It will have a different, more reliable radar system, EASR, instead of the expensive dual-band radar. The Ford class is designed to be future-proof. It has massive reserves of electrical power, enough to install directed energy weapons, lasers, and heavy electronic jamming pods that haven't even been invented yet. The Nimitz-class was built for the Cold War, designed to fight the Soviet Union with steam and steel. The Ford class is built for the Star Wars era, designed to fight China with algorithms and electrons. Innovation is messy. When the British launched the HMS Dreadnought in 1906, it made every other battleship obsolete overnight, but it had engines that broke down constantly and fire control systems that were experimental. The USS Gerald R. Ford is the dreadnought of our time. It was over budget. It was late. It was broken. It was the laughingstock of the defense industry for 5 years. But now it is the most powerful conventional weapon on Earth. It represents the American philosophy of war: solve problems with money and engineering. It is a glass giant filled with screens, fiber optics, and fragile code, but it carries a big stick. It forces the enemy to spend billions developing hypersonic missiles just to have a chance of scratching the paint. It is a floating sovereign territory that brings its own power grid, its own airport, and its own rules to any ocean on the planet. As the sun sets over the Atlantic, the lights on the island of the Ford turn from white to amber. The flight deck crew prepares for night ops. The silence of the EMALS system is broken only by the roar of the jet engines. A sailor in the bowels of the ship monitors the reactor coolant flow on a touchscreen. Another sailor in the galley prepares midnight rations. They are living inside a machine that is half prototype, half fortress. They are the guinea pigs of the future fleet, the ones who figure out how to make the magnets work when the software freezes. They are the soul of the glass giant. If this deep dive into the engineering struggles and triumphs of the USS Ford opened your eyes to the reality of naval innovation, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to Tactical Chow. We don't just read the spec sheets, we tell you what happens when the toilet clogs and the radar fails. Second, smash that like button. It helps us keep the lights on and the content flowing. Third, leave a comment below. I want to know, do you think the $13 billion price tag was worth it for the new technology, or should the Navy have stuck with the proven reliability of the Nimitz design? Is the risk of software failure worth the reward of efficiency? Let me know in the comments. And finally, if you think the Ford is complex, wait until you see the nuclear engine room of a submarine. Click the video on your screen right now to see how we bottle a star in a steel tube to power a vessel that never surfaces. It is physics on the edge of madness. Click it and I'll see you there.